I'm going to make sure Kamal's good with the live stream. Okay, wonderful. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you again for being here this evening. My name is Blair Murphy. I'm the Senior Curator and Director of Exhibitions at Museum of Contemporary Art Arlington. Is this anyone's first time here at the Innovation Studio? Oh, wonderful. Oh, that's great. So welcome. This is Museum of Contemporary Art Arlington's Innovation Studio and Store. So we have an artist residency here in the space. We have space for making art. Anyone can come in and make art, be creative at any time. We also have a lot of free public programs here in this space and out at Met Park. So there's a lot of stuff coming up. If you're interested in finding out more, you can sign up for our email list, follow us on social media. I think there's a schedule of upcoming events floating around, so you can grab that before you leave. And then at our main location, the main museum over near Virginia Square, we have exhibitions, an education program, and an artist residency program as well. So if you haven't made it to that space, I would definitely recommend checking out what we have going on there. The conversation with Hedia tonight, we'll talk about the exhibitions program and the residency at the museum. Just a heads up about the museum space. We are currently closed for preparing new exhibitions and also doing some work on the building. So on June 27th, it'll be very exciting. We'll have art after hours to celebrate our new summer exhibitions and our reopening after a little bit of maintenance work. So we're really looking forward to that. That evening, we'll celebrate the new shows. We'll have open studios with our resident artists over at that location. And then we'll also have a really great special interactive art experience with an artist named Nagara Kami, who's actually a former Innovation Studio resident artist as well. So if you have been to the Innovation Studio before, you might have seen Nagara's dance floor project that she did here. And the event on June 27th that she'll be doing for Art After Hours is an expansion of that project. So it is 5 dance floors instead of 1. So there will be a DJ. So please, mark your calendar for June 27th for that. And I am so happy to be here tonight with Hedia to talk about her residency here at the Innovation Studio and her work in general. MoCA Arlington has a very long-running relationship with Hedia. I've worked with her over many years as a curator, so it's great to be here with her tonight. You might have seen at the museum last fall solo exhibition, solo retrospective of Hedia's work that we had up. So we'll talk about that a little bit tonight. I am going to start off with her bio, and then we'll have a conversation, and we'll have some time for questions at the end as well. So Hedia Ilci is an Iranian-American artist whose creative practice is a navigation of her multifaceted experience as an immigrant. She was born in Tehran in 1981 and moved to the United States at the age of 18 and has lived and worked in the Washington, D.C. area since then. So she earned her MFA at American University and her BFA at the Corcoran College of Art and Design. She was a resident artist, like I mentioned, at MoCA Arlington from 2012 to 2018. And her work has been exhibited in numerous solo and group exhibitions nationally and in this area, and is also in public and private collections, including an acquisition by the Phillips Collection a few years ago, as well as the collections of the Federal Reserve Board, the Microsoft Art Collection, the Carl M. Freeman Foundation, and the Love, Luck, and Faith Foundation. And her retrospective last fall, Hear the Waving Flag, Hear the Other World, took place at MoCA Arlington. So thank you for being here, Hedia. And thanks everyone for joining us. So one of the things that was really interesting and really sort of unusual about working on the retrospective with you was that we actually did start with work that you were making even before graduate school. There was this really is this thread sort of throughout your practice from that early work to what you've done more recently. So I thought that would be a good place to start off talking some about your experience growing up in Iran and then how that shaped that early work that some people may have seen in the exhibition.
Thanks for the introduction and thanks for being here, everybody. So as you mentioned, I was born and raised in Iran. I grew up in the capital, Tehran. It was just a couple of years after the revolution started, the Islamic Revolution of '79. And that overlapped with the Iran-Iraq War just a few months before I was born. So that war lasted for 8 years. So the first 7.5 years of my childhood was during this war. So that really had a big influence on my life and experiences, and the youth of the 1980s and 90s, people who were just growing up during that time, and then my generation that followed. That created a sense of almost like a fragmented identity, because we had to deal with this shift of government, and then but also deal with what the war brought for us. And there was a lot of trauma. I have firsthand experience. My dad was a Navy pilot, so there was kind of closer proximity to the war. Even though we lived in the capital, which wasn't necessarily the epicenter of all the war action, but I remember learning how to read and write when I was about 6.5 years old, with a candlelight. My grandmother was a school teacher, so she taught me how to read and write. So we had blocked all the windows and had a little candlelight, so I could read what she was teaching me. Even sleeping outside in open fields, just so we wouldn't get bombed at times when there were bombing raids. So that was the idea of war. It's not just an idea; it's something really tangible. So that has carried later on. It started to come through my work, and I feel like that the experience of growing up in that time, this very tumultuous time in Iran, history of Iran, really created this sense of like doubling of identity for people of my generation. So I talk about duality in my work after I moved here, but that idea of duality has always existed, I think, for my generation, because what we lived in the safety of the homes versus what we had to present outside in public was always this kind of opposite. So there was a expected sense of homogenized identity from us. So having that individual or sense of self and individuality wasn't really much of a possibility. So when I moved to the States, I was just 18, so that's also a very young age to uproot oneself, and I couldn't speak English, so my English was really bad. I could just like maybe put together a basic sentence. So the cultural shift, this kind of very harsh contrast between what I had grown up with, and this new environment, language that I couldn't communicate with. It was a huge culture shock. But I think that allowed me to start to think about visual language as a way of kind of using it as almost like a surrogate tongue to be able to connect and communicate and have a sense of belonging. So I started to do more art, and my naturally issues of identity and belonging as an immigrant, as a young person, 18-year-old, obviously you're dealing with all sorts of existential issues, but also being uprooted. So that all started to come into the work I was making. So these are some images from the wartime, but some of the earlier work obviously had a lot of symbolism from my experiences growing up during the war, but also using the symbols like the hair as a symbol of defiance, but also as almost like a feminine weapon to fight through the kind of navigate through this chaotic landscape that I had painted. So other paintings represented, like this example, scenes of war, but in a sometimes more subtle way, by using painting the warfare imagery into ornamented objects, by using decorative motifs to push back their power, that kind of sense of like authority. But then also using the language that I was familiar with, like miniature painting, using them to deconstruct them, but also then reconstruct them with using my own photographs from mostly women of my close friends and family, to create these hybridized paintings that were kind of non-linear narratives. They were moving around, just doing different activities, but also in this like tumultuous visual space.
Yeah, this work brings together so many of the threads you're talking about. And I also love that this is one of the pieces where the hair starts to grow. So that sense of it sort of growing into the space almost uncontrollably.
And then later the hair, in this painting, the hair started to completely separate from the body of the protagonist and just existed as its own element, as its own motif. So the body came out of the picture. Yeah. So yeah, those are some of the earlier.
Yeah, and these also too sort of start to show the two threads of your work that have really continued to grow and develop. So thinking about the way you started using the pouring technique, can you talk a little bit about that and how that became part of your work and part of your process?
Right. Yeah. That's a big part of part of the practice. So I don't know if you're familiar with my painting process. Some of you might be, but I start on the floor in a very spontaneous way. I don't have any preconceived ideas. It's a very chance-based process. I pour and layer and wait for this like very accidental, unpredictable pour to become a source of image making. And I started to use this technique because but I was in it all started when I was in a printmaking class when I was an undergrad at the Corcoran. One of my great teachers, Dennis O'Neill, who passed away a few years ago, he had a project. So I don't know if you're familiar with printmaking, but it's very structured. And what he wanted us to do was to think about the process in a more painterly way. So there's a sheet, which is actually this material that I painted on. It's called mylar. It's a synthetic paper. So I poured, he wanted us to be painterly, so we started to pour and push the paint around instead of applying it with a brush. And I started to really respond to that. It was something that was very interesting and complex to me. And that led into the Traveler series with the women with the long hair. And when I was in another painting class, during a critique, one of my faculty members, she started to reference abstract expressionism. She was like, what you're doing seems very similar to what abstract expressionists were doing. And so that became almost like a gateway into the way that I started to think about what abstraction meant in the US and what were some of the techniques that these artists were using. So I've been basically in my process referencing abstract expressionism. It's a form of abstraction, but also abstractions that happen in Persian art, with a lot of patterning and ornamentation, and kind of fusing them to create these hybrid paintings. Some of my references, like here an example, on the right, it's a Jackson Pollock painting. Recently was sold for a lot of money. And Helen Frankenthaler, a second generation color field painters. I wanted to represent a woman here, but some of the examples, so they were really working edge to edge, kind of pushing to the edges of their painting surface. And I wanted to also try that, to work on the floor and push the paint around.
Yeah, and that too, it seems like at the time, there was the material aspect you were interested in, and then also in terms of their role in art history, they really did, the abstract expressionists are very associated with the United States and very like the New York school. Many of them were working in New York in the 50s at this moment when American art became taken more seriously on the world stage. It had been considered kind of just sort of following after whatever Europe was doing. And then in the 1950s, as America came into a position of greater power, that happened in the art world as well. And was that aspect of the art history something that you were interested in at the time, in addition to the material elements?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, process has a big part, but also I was thinking about because I was looking at Persian painting and thinking about the height of Persian art, and it's like it's probably like 15th, 16th century Persian art. So that was the height of the art in my culture. And then I was like, what is almost like equal to that. And that was the first time that American art became like almost became center stage in the world, as you're saying. So that was really important. But it was also something else about the emphasis on the individual expression that was really important. And that's something that's very contradictory to, to my culture, to some sense, but also to the practice of, let's say, illuminating a manuscript or painting a miniature. It was always a group activity. So you didn't have one painter who created the whole thing. It was like a group process. So it wasn't ever about the individual.
Right,
so
it was a workshop.
Yeah, exactly, like workshops. So it was that emphasis on the individual that really appealed to me as someone who, I'm here in the West, and I'm looking for, freedom and self-expression. So why not explore something that, has already done that in a way. But also it was a very male-dominated period. And I was excited to kind of put myself in the middle of, what they were practicing. Okay, I'm this petite woman, so why can't I do this? I'm going to try to play with some of your ideas too. So process, but also some of the
yeah, the physicality of it is a different way of working too that is appealing.
And this is my studio. This is just the beginning of a painting. On the left, it's when there's nothing has happened, and then layers of pour. And eventually, after going back up and down and looking at the work, painting comes together. So it takes some time.
Yeah, and the physicality of the pouring sort of takes us to almost the dichotomy in your process to some extent, because then the flip side of it is the patterning and the more detailed work that you are doing. And I know we talked a lot as we were working on the show, that when you were growing up in Tehran, you were really interested more in modern and contemporary art and less in the art historical side of the museums and what you could go see, or that to some extent that kind of imagery was around all the time. And so a lot of you're interested in it as an artist, as part of your practice, didn't really happen until you were here in the United States. Can you talk a little bit about how that developed?
I mean, it's true, as I feel like the distance when I was I call it displaced from my homeland, it almost gave me this space to be able to look back. And that kind of sense of longing made me more interested in, it was like my past was fading. So I was trying to figure out what it meant to me. So I started to look at some historical painting traditions. And maybe, at the same time, think about modern art, but in a different way. So I started to appreciate it in a different way. I've always, I feel like I wasn't trained to paint in a traditional sense. It's been something that I've, taught myself, and it's not in no way even close to what they had done traditionally. They were doing. It's just almost like an homage to those very amazing the practice they had. But growing up in Iran, I was surrounded by this rich visual field. Even in everyone's house, you're going to have a beautiful ornate rug. You're going to have handicrafts, but also outside, you might walk by a blue tiled structure. So it's like all of this has always been a part of my visual vocabulary. So it was kind of a natural segue when I moved here that I started to draw, from something that was already in my my system in a way, and try to explore that a little bit further. So I started to look at illuminated manuscripts and the delicacy of these patternings. But it was also a very different way of painting. So it was a huge shift after the pours they're very physical and unpredictable, to move into something that's so systematic. So I thought it was an interesting way of looking at these different painting processes as almost like representations of maybe the way I was looking at my culture, you know, being between very opposite kind of systems, traditions. So I like that shift from chaos and the unknown into something that's very systematic and organized and almost meditative in its process. So an example, I started to do my pours, but also incorporate some of these detailed kind of archways that reference miniature paintings, and like insert an image of my grandmother into the painting. Or this is also it's a small video. I don't know. I know the screen is a little small, but it shows you on the right. It's a very repetitive, time-consuming process of painting the pattern. On the left, there's a finished pattern. So it's like layers and layers of paint. So it's a great way of slowing down and kind of moving inwards after this kind of outwardly process. So.
And you're often looking at specific historic manuscripts or paintings for inspiration, at least, even if not sort of exactly using them. But that's
yeah. I look at. I mean, I think the Timurian, that's like late 14th century
yes.
Through early 16th century, and then later on into the Safavid. Of course, they just it's a big chunk of time, but definitely there was a tremendous artworks. Sometimes I kind of wish I could go back and study everything. Could reverse time. It'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah, and so we've sort of, it's interesting because I think we've seen images of this piece sort of in process, and now this is the artwork, the triptych, which was in the show at MoCA Arlington, if any of you saw it, but here on the wall. And I think this piece was, I think, early on as you became more interested in landscapes specifically. I know landscapes has sort of been a recurring theme throughout your work. The Traveler series is very much about the landscape. And then in the last few years, you've been sort of working with the pours more in the direction of landscape. How did that turn in your work develop? Or was there a...
Yeah, you're right. I've been making landscapes. Even when I don't know if anyone's seen some of the paintings I look at. So some of them, I wish I had an image of it, but they almost look like topographical or aerial images of Earth. And I call them, so those all happen through the painting process. So even I think about those as forms of landscape because they're representing land formations, and it always, I feel like a part of me always wants to create these places. They're like, they don't really exist, obviously. There's spaces that I kind of make up and put together, but maybe I'm trying to create a space that I don't know, do I want to belong to, or I'm searching for, or it's a kind of a combination of different places that I've known. But it are also strange spaces, it could be internal landscape. So I've always been interested in landscape imagery in one way or another. I did a residency in Wyoming, artist residencies. They invite you to come like here, but that was like a live workspace. I was there for a whole month to be in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it was really a lovely place, but in this ranch, and I only had 6 people in my cohort, and that it was such an inspiring space to be in, because I was for the first time exposed to this vast landscape, and my relationship to I feel like the way I was looked at landscape really changed. This is actually from the residency. So we would hike up over the little hill, and there was just nothing. It was just openness. So there were moments, I feel like for the first time I probably experienced the idea of sublime there. And it, it's sublime. I think it's this idea of course, there's beauty, but there's awe and terror. So it's a combination of these emotions that through interaction with nature, we could kind of experience. And I had all of that by being in that space. I remember one time I went out to do a hike, and then it started to suddenly the weather changed, and my phone started to shut down because it was so cold. I was there in January. It was so cold. I didn't have internet connection, no connection. I couldn't see anything anymore. So like the power of nature and it's switching so fast. I mean, it was just so overwhelming. So I was just in awe, but also I was about to die.
Yeah, I don't think I realized before that you were in Wyoming in January.
Yeah. No, it was dramatic time.
Yeah.
January, and then I went back in February. And another time I went in August. That was beautiful. But I was like, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
So it's just that feeling, but also clear skies, just to see the Milky Way, and it was just beautiful. So that started to come into my my painting when I got back to the studio. So the spaces of the pores became more complex. There was more layering, and I feel like that sense of that landscape started to kind of merge into what I was doing in the studio after. And then I think I was experimenting, and then I came across an article by Robert Rosenblum. It was written in '61, so it's an old piece. It was written in Newsweek, and it was titled Abstract Sublime. So what he was arguing, he was saying, he was thinking that the tradition of the Romantic sublime from Northern European painters, it didn't really end, but it was carried in the work of abstract expressionists like especially Mark Rothko, Jackson Pollock, Clifford Still, and Barnett Newman. I feel like so he was thinking that abstraction, that wasn't pure abstraction, but they were still exploring some of the ideas of the sublime in their process of abstraction. And because I was working with landscape and I was working with abstract expressionism, so it almost gave me almost like a permission to start to explore some of these ideas in my own paintings.
Right, because that was the other art historical sort of time period, I guess, that you were interested in already, was the 19th century landscape and the landscape painters who had been sort of working in the sublime and making these paintings of shipwrecks and sort of acts of nature that were awe-inspiring and also terrifying.
Apocalyptic kind of sceneries. I remember for a painting I looked a lot at a J.M.W. Turner. I did a small series of red paintings, very apocalyptic, and I was looking at them before coming across the article. So I was already kind of using those as references. And John Martin, it's like big red paintings of the apocalypse. And so I was, it was already part of my kind of practice in the studio. So it just almost was
it sort of explained the connections you were already making. Yeah.
Started like, oh, okay. Kind of makes sense a little bit. So this is a painting. That wasn't at the show, but that's a painting that I did, and this is a Turner painting. And I did not look at this painting, but I find it interesting to find connections sometimes after the fact. And there's obviously a visual connection that was, again, very chance-based, which is intriguing because I start with a very chance-based process.
Yeah, that was for the exhibition at MoCA Arlington. We were really fortunate to have art historian Eleanor Harvey write about Hedia's work for the catalog. And I love that point she made about Eleanor Harvey. She's an art historian who focuses on 19th century landscape and American landscape painters. And I think she's very fascinated by Hedia's process, in part because the 19th century painters she is an expert in. Really, she writes a lot about how they did a lot of sketching. They went out into nature and did sketches and drawings, but their work was really planned out. So when they started to do one of these big, huge landscapes you can now see at the American Art Museum, they were really planning them perfectly, whereas Hedia's process is so chance-based. So it's sort of very different than that, a different way of beginning your work, especially. Yeah.
And then, that's it. And this is an example of Thomas Cole, Hudson River School painter. So it's really interested in like this uncanny space that's created. So I, just wanted to have. This is also in the catalog that they printed.
Yeah, and the way the viewer is sort of placed in relationship to the space does make me think, about your compositions.
And just one last painting to, it's not a direct reference, but just to show, it's like I look at these as, I think I've mentioned this, but as kind of psychological spaces, landscapes, more an internal kind of reflection. So they're multi-layered, there's so much of it that stays private with me, and then there's so much of it that I can share, and it's borrowed, and it can solve.
And built on these layers of art history too.
Exactly.
I think are really wonderful. Great. Well, I think we can open it up to some audience questions, and then I have some questions too.
Sure. So I met you a long time. Love your work and process, but I'm curious, especially since it's so random, right? How important is pausing in the process to like sort of, especially the first layer where you're putting the paint off the palettes or the material, the mylar, excuse me. How important is that pausing and sort of absorbing, or does that change frequently depending on what piece and what inspiration and what you have?
It does. I need time definitely to process and just try to figure out. So there's a lot of, and I think that's the problem of a chance-based, painting process, because I have no idea what's going to happen. So there's a lot of, pausing and looking. But sometimes if I have a deadline, I have to make that decision.
I love how reality just seeps into the process.
You don't have that luxury anymore. But there's and some pieces are a little bit easier. They're more, they're like ready, and already give me this kind of good base to work with.
Gotcha.
So the harder paintings to deal with are usually the better paintings, and
Absolutely.
I don't know. It's always the challenging paintings that turn out.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think we're gonna. Do we need to give people the mic for questions? Okay. Great. Okay. Sorry. We'll go here, and then we'll come back to you after.
It's a very speculative question, but if you had stayed in Iran, what do you think your art would be like today? Knowing all the references and effects that you got from coming here, and it would have been different.
Honestly, I don't even know if I would have been a painter. I studied graphic design. I was still young, but I studied to be a graphic designer. So I think that probably would have been what I kept doing. But I think I still would have done more abstract, but in a more modern. Yeah, that is. I don't know. That's yeah. But I always wonder, because it never even for a second was part of my thought process that I would be a painter. Like that wasn't even a possibility. Like, why would I be a painter? I needed because I didn't think it would be a career opportunity, option actually. So yeah, maybe more self-portraiture. Who knows? Maybe more autobiographical.
Thinking about the artists who are working in Iran now, would you?
Oh, there's so much. I think there's just so much going on now. So there's all sorts of work, but yeah, I do wish I could live there for a good chunk of time because I left and I never went back to be there as an artist. I've only visited my family here and there, but just to be there as an adult and as an artist by myself, I think that would be a great experience. So hopefully one day I'll let you know what happens.
Oh, yep. Oh. Okay. So yeah, it's not amplifying in the space. It's just for the recording.
Oh, okay. Yeah. There's a spiritual depth to your work. And I was wondering, when you brought up the apocalypse, I didn't even think about the apocalypse. And I didn't know if there was a specific cultural, religious, like was something in the air, a story about the apocalypse that really...
So much in the air.
Okay. besides the actual, you know what I mean? But like a traditional in the scriptures kind of thing.
I think the idea of the apocalypse, I don't think I look yes and no, but specifically with the red painting that I mentioned, it was responding to what was happening politically at the time when I was working at the, so it felt like the end of the world. It felt like, so I guess that it doesn't directly relate to the way apocalypse is looked at in a religious way, but it is I don't know, idea of the end of, so it was more in that sense. But a lot of the artists that I look at, they definitely were referencing things from a religious point of view. So yeah, there's that connection that way. But,
thank you.
Yeah.
Hi. Can you hear me okay?
No, if you,
Oh, okay. I was just wondering, I noticed in a lot of your paintings, there seems to be trees with no leaves on them, like bare trees. And some, even in that one, there's like a dichotomy between the trees with no leaves and then the ones in the future and in the background.
right.
Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I was actually.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Just asking about because I've been painting trees lately. The trees are bare trees, so there are no leaves. And so so why I'm basically what? So I think lately the trees I've been just working with bare trees. But in like earlier works, I had trees with leaves, and I think this was more direct reference to Persian painting, looking at miniature paintings and like these pockets of kind of walled gardens, looking at. But I think there is something I've mentioned psychological. I think I'm looking for this there's like I don't know how to explain it, but maybe they feel more poetic in a way. They're more I think there's more expression in a bare tree than if I had painted it than a tree with leaves. There's a somber sensibility about it. So I'm interested in that to create that kind of space. And there's also we know trees usually come back to life, so there's hope, but they're still in this like stage of like renewal. So I don't know, there's more expression in the way branches can be painted. Yeah, so I think it's just like a visual choice, but there's a bit more, they're more expressive for me. They're more sorry. Yeah.
I think I can talk loud enough, but
Sorry, the mic's a little weird, but we're recording for the live stream, so it's recording you for the live stream, but it's not amplifying you. Yeah.
oh, okay. Does that work?
Yeah, I hear
Okay, you can hear me. Okay. I was just noticing the fact, like what you're saying with the and just tell me if I'm on the right track, that your work, it seems like it's a process of, it's the physical, it's the external landscape and also the internal landscape. It's almost like the branches of your thoughts, you know, and what's happening on the outside, and it, like you're going on a journey. And the colors are almost sometimes dreamlike. You know, like it's like you're going in and thinking about what you're seeing and looking at it at different levels. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
That there's like a metaphysical side to it and a psychological
Yeah.
side to it? Am
Yeah.
I putting too much into it, or?
No. I can. I mean, no. That is true. Yeah, I agree. There are definitely psychological spaces, and then the use of color can help emphasize that kind of sensibility. But sometimes the color combinations are completely accidental too. And I think it's interesting how something that's so chance-based can evoke like a particular emotion or image. So I don't know. To me, even I don't know. I'm fascinated by that myself. Like it's something that's completely out of my control, but it's the basis of what I do and make. So
Thanks.
Thanks. Hediya, I'm just curious, looking at the pieces in particular behind you, and to comment on color, I want to kind of bring up the contrast of light and dark, and how I understand like your first layer is often very unintentional and it's free flowing, but does it then also become intentional? Like, is there a story to the light? Like, they all feel like there's like an essence or a hope or an energy that's like coming through or tearing through. And I don't know if there's if I'm reading into that or if there's actually something to it.
Sorry. I think it is still, I mean, that's something that I hope I can get through this process, but it's, I mean, it really happens by just trying, you know, I play, and there's no, like, I put dark over light, light over dark, you know, it's like a call and response. I keep going back and forth until things start to work together. And then there's a little bit of painting after when I'm done and starting to render the paintings. So I might push an area that's a little darker to bring it, you know, make it lighter. So I intentionally do introduce some like lighter colors or light sensibility into the work. But yeah, I'm trying to, but I think that's also very much by chance. I mean, controlled chance.
Thank you. I will also say that when you put a spotlight on many of these, they change. I don't know, they glow, they have a different energy. So they very much are experienced different in dim light versus direct light. And if you have an opportunity to experience it that way, it's magical.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and these 4 pieces are from different moments in time.
Yeah.
This is, you know, obviously there's only room for a small selection of work, so that's something that, you know, we talked about the large frame piece behind you, that being, you know, relatively early, and then I know the piece, the other large piece here is
From 2016, 15, 16.
And I think that one was in the exhibition, and you've talked some about that being an important transitional moment in a way, that was kind of when one of the early works where you started using the pores and then thinking about how to then kind of fill in the spaces that were left by the pores with the patterning.
Yeah, true. Like the oval shapes, the kind of egg shapes, those were kind of holes in the pore. And I was like, what am I going to do now? I'm going to make these like connecting worlds together. So that was how this whole thing started. It could have been upside down. It could have been the other way. So it's just.
Yeah. And then the landscape is there along the bottom too,
Yeah.
which I really like. Just
But the
subtle.
trees.
Are there
I
any
have
other
a question?
Okay.
I was wondering, where you're going with your work and if there's anything new or undiscovered that you're exploring at this moment, ideas or technique.
So the residency, it's been really great being at Innovation Studio because I kept working on my body of work that I've been working on. But then I started to prepare for the workshop. I started to play with paper, so doing quick sketches on paper, and I think I want to explore that. So I don't know where that's going to go, but I'm really interested in trying to do smaller, not I don't want to call them sketches, but just quicker artworks that I can, because these take such a long time. If I can find a way of working through smaller paintings quicker, I think that would be interesting. I mean, I don't know what's going to come from it, but I'm really interested in that. So I'll let you know, Sarah.
Yeah, and the workshop is this Friday, just to plug that while we're talking about it. This Friday remind me of the time.
6 to 8.
This Friday from 6 to 8, Hedia's workshop will be happening here at the Innovation Studio with an activity she's planned related to this idea of the working on these smaller sketches.
And what's the name of the workshop?
Good question. Chance and control. Yes.
Being here at the Innovation Studio, I'm guessing you have kind of a different audience and a lot of younger people come through here versus what you had at the museum and some of your other. What reaction are you getting from kids? Because it seems like this artwork must be really appealing to them.
I mean, they're super sweet, very talented. So I think they're really. They're so expressive. I've had many kids come in and just look at, there's a blue pour, and immediately they're like, this is like ocean. It's just, they see things in the pour, which is really interesting, and they're not shy to express what they see. And quickly they forget that. But it's been really a joy, because they can work in the space as I'm working on my paintings in the studio. So it's nice to have that.
Yeah, and I always when I think about your relationship with MoCA Arlington, I tend to think about your time in the residency program there. And then I remember that when we were preparing for the show, I found out you had actually started as an art instructor for summer camp.
Yes,
yeah.
2006 or 7, I think. Long time ago.
Yeah. So that's one of the great things one of the reasons I love being at MoCA Arlington is we have these because we have so many different kinds of programs, we're able to engage with artists in such different ways. Is there any other questions?
Oh, wait here.
I was curious, when do you feel done with an artwork?
That's a tough question. But I think honestly, it's a gut feeling. But when I can't change anything about it, when nothing feels out of place, everything kind of works together for me. So that's when it feels done. There are moments, again, going back to if I have a deadline, I have to call it done. But that rarely happens. I stay up. I've been in the gallery space with a paintbrush before. I've done that the day before the opening.
But you can't back up, right? Because of the pour after that. After you start on to the next stage, you can't back up from that at all.
No, but it's always the the last touches. I'm not going to change something drastically, but it could be like adding some outlines or yeah. No, that's true.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I think that's a great place to wrap up. But Hedia's here if you have additional individual questions. Yeah. And like we mentioned, the workshop is this Friday from 6 to 8, and Hedia is a resident here until June 13th.
Yeah.
So she'll be working in the space for a little while longer. So thank you again.
Thank you.
So nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
No, it was
Yeah,
great. A long time. Exactly. Wow, you have a good memory.
No, I feel like of course your face is so